When the door opened, the CEO recognized his first love and begged her to stay. Hello, everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, it is free, and it is the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support truly means the world to us. Where are you watching from right now? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now let us return to the main character. The door opened slowly, just enough for the hallway light to spill inside. For a brief second he thought his mind was playing a cruel trick on him, because standing there barefoot on the worn wooden floor was the one face he had not allowed himself to remember for more than a decade. Her face. Time seemed to freeze. The air felt heavier, like it had weight. The city noise outside the building faded into nothing, replaced by the sound of his own breathing, uneven and shallow. She looked older, of course, softer around the eyes. A few strands of hair slipped loose from a low ponytail. But the way she held herself, guarded yet stubbornly calm, was exactly the same woman who had once walked out of his life without looking back. She did not recognize him. Not at first. To her, he was just another man in a dark coat standing in the hallway with a polite professional expression. Another stranger knocking too late in the evening. Yes, she asked, her voice cautious, already halfway prepared to close the door again. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. This was not how it was supposed to happen. He was here on business, nothing more. A routine visit tied to paperwork, property, and signatures. Numbers on a page. A task that should have taken no more than 5 minutes. Yet now every carefully rehearsed sentence vanished, because all he could see was the memory of a younger version of her, laughing in the rain, arguing about nothing, swearing they would conquer the world together. She shifted her weight slightly, clearly uncomfortable with his silence. "Are you looking for someone?" she asked again. That was when reality finally snapped back into place. He forced himself to inhale, to blink, to remember who he was now. "Yes," he said, his voice steady, practiced. "I am here about the unit." Her expression changed immediately, guarded, reserved, distant. "Oh," she replied, "you must be with the agency." "Something like that," he answered. It was the safest lie he could manage in that moment. She hesitated, then opened the door a little wider, just enough to keep control of the space. The apartment behind her was small, clean but modest. The kind of place someone lived in because they had learned how to survive, not because life had been generous. "I was not expecting anyone today," she said. "I apologize," he replied. "I will not take much of your time." That was when she looked up at him more carefully, not with recognition, not with shock, just curiosity. And somehow, that hurt more than if she had slammed the door in his face, because it meant she truly did not see him anymore. The man who had once held her hand and promised he would never leave was gone, replaced by someone she would never imagine could belong to her past. She stepped aside reluctantly. "Fine. 5 minutes." As he crossed the threshold, his chest tightened. 5 minutes. If she knew who he was, 5 minutes would never be enough. The door closed behind him with a soft click, sealing them inside the same room for the first time in years. He glanced around, pretending to observe the apartment, but every detail felt painfully intimate. The faint scent of soap in the air, the chipped mug on the counter, the small plant by the window, still alive despite the lack of sunlight. She had always been good at keeping things alive. "So," she said, folding her arms, "what exactly is this about?" He turned to face her. Up close, the memories hit harder. The same eyes, the same quiet strength, the same woman he had never truly let go of. And before logic could stop him, before pride or fear could intervene, the truth almost slipped out. Almost. Instead, he swallowed and said the only thing he could manage. "There has been a review of the property," he began carefully. She nodded, already bracing herself for bad news. He had built empires, negotiated deals worth billions of dollars, faced boardrooms full of men who feared his name. but standing in front of her again, pretending not to know her, pretending not to feel his heart breaking all over again. This was the hardest thing he had ever done. She closed the door behind him, not hard, not softly either, just enough to remind him that he was a guest. Temporary, replaceable. So, she said, gesturing toward the small table near the window, "You said this would only take 5 minutes." "Yes," he replied. "I will be brief." She did not sit. Instead, she leaned against the counter, arms crossed, eyes steady. It was a defensive posture, one he remembered all too well. She used it whenever she felt cornered, whenever life asked more from her than she was ready to give. He glanced at his watch out of habit, then immediately regretted it. The movement felt wrong here, too polished for a place like this. She noticed. "Is this a bad time?" she asked. "No," he said quickly. "I mean, yes, it is late. But no, this is not a bad time." Her eyebrow lifted slightly, unconvinced. He straightened, choosing his words carefully. "There has been an internal review of the building. Some units are being reassessed." "Reassessed how?" she asked. He paused. This was the part he had done 100 times before, in offices with glass walls and leather chairs. But here, with her watching him, every sentence felt heavier. "Ownership," he said. "Long-term plans, structural updates, possible changes." She let out a slow breath. "So this is about rent." "It could be," he admitted. Her jaw tightened. The reaction was immediate, instinctive. "I pay on time," she said. "Every month. I have the receipts." "I am not questioning that," he replied. "That is usually what people say right before they question it." He nodded. "I understand." Silence stretched between them. Outside, a car passed, tires hissing against wet pavement. Inside, the apartment felt smaller, like the walls were listening. She finally looked away, toward the window. "They always find a nicer word for it," she said quietly. "Reassessment, optimization, transition." He said nothing. "Last year it was market alignment," she continued. "Before that, necessary adjustments. It always means the same thing." "And what does it mean?" he asked. "That people like me need to start packing." Her voice was calm, but he heard the exhaustion beneath it. Not panic, not anger, just the fatigue of someone who had learned not to expect stability. "That is not what I want," he said. She turned back to him. "You do not get to decide what you want. You are just delivering the message." The words landed harder than she intended. He felt it. He deserved it. "I asked for this meeting," he said slowly, "because there may be alternatives." She studied him now, really studied him. Alternatives usually come with strings. Not always. She gave a small, humorless smile. "You would be surprised how often they do." I was turned now. He glanced around again, taking in the apartment with new eyes. The scuffed floor, the neatly folded blanket on the couch, the bookshelf that was half full, as if she had learned not to own more than she could carry. "How long have you lived here?" he asked. She hesitated, then answered, "Almost 4 years." 4 years. Longer than he had stayed anywhere in the last decade. "And you live alone?" he asked. "Yes." The answer was firm, final. He nodded. "I am not here to rush you," he said. "Nothing will change tonight." She seemed to relax, just a fraction. "Then why come in person?" The question hung between them. "Because I needed to see you again. Because I needed to know if you were real. Because I never stopped looking for you." "Instead," he said, "because some conversations should not happen over email." She considered that. Then she exhaled. "That is fair." She moved toward the table and finally sat down. He remained standing, unsure if sitting would cross another invisible line. "You said your name earlier," she said casually, "but I did not catch it." For a heartbeat, the room tilted. This was the moment, the smallest one, the kind that changed everything. He could tell her now. End the pretense. Break the fragile balance they were standing on. Instead, he gave her the name he had used all evening. Daniel, he said. She nodded, accepting it without suspicion. All right, Daniel. Word. Hearing his real name on her lips again, even a false version of it, nearly undid him. She folded her hands together on the table. Then tell me, she said, what happens next? He met her eyes. I am not entirely sure, he answered honestly, and for the first time since the door had opened, she believed him. She stood and moved toward the kettle, more out of habit than intention. He watched quietly as she filled it with water, her movements efficient, practiced. This was not someone who wasted motion. Every step had a purpose. Do you want some tea? She asked, without turning around. Yes, he said, then added, thank you. She nodded, as if confirming something to herself. The kettle clicked on. A low hum filled the space between them. You always drank tea at night, he said before he could stop himself. She froze, just for a second, barely noticeable, but he saw it. I do, she replied carefully. It helps me sleep. He swallowed. I thought so. She turned to face him, her expression unreadable. Have we met before? The question was simple, direct, dangerous. He felt his pulse quicken. This was the risk of staying too long, of listening instead of leaving, of letting memory speak when silence would have been safer. No, he said after a pause. I just noticed the mug. She glanced down at the mug in her hand. It was chipped near the handle. Old. Familiar. She did not argue. But something shifted. She poured the hot water and placed the mug on the table, then reached for another cup and filled it halfway for herself. She sat down again, this time more slowly, as if grounding herself. So, she said, wrapping both hands around the cup. You said there might be alternatives. Yes. What kind? He chose honesty, but only the kind that did not reveal everything. There are cases where tenants are given extended time, or revised agreements, sometimes even exemptions. End quote. She studied the steam rising from her cup. And who decides that? He met her gaze. Someone higher up. She smiled faintly. Of course. He hesitated. You sound like you do not believe me. I believe you believe it, she said. That is not the same thing. Fair. He nodded. You are right. Silence again. But this time it was not sharp. It settled between them, heavy but calm. She took a small sip of tea. Why do you care? She asked suddenly. The question landed without warning. People usually do not come in person unless they want something, she continued. Or unless they feel guilty. Which one is it for you? He did not answer right away, because the real answer would shatter everything. Instead, he said, because this place matters to you. She laughed softly. You do not know that. I can see it, he replied. The way you keep it, the way you talk about it. She looked around the apartment, as if seeing it through his eyes for the first time. It is just a roof, she said. No, he said gently. It is a boundary, one you built. Her fingers tightened slightly around the mug. You sound like someone who has never had to build one, she said. He almost smiled. Almost. You would be surprised, he answered. The kettle clicked off. The sound echoed in the quiet room. She set her cup down. I learned a long time ago not to expect permanence, she said. Places, people, promises. The words cut deeper than she knew. I am not asking for permanence, he said. Only time. She looked at him then, really looked at him. Not as a stranger, not as a messenger, but as a man who was choosing his words too carefully. Time for what? She asked. He searched her face for recognition, for anger, for any sign that the past was knocking from the inside. There are things that should not be decided in one evening, he said. She leaned back in her chair. That sounds reasonable. Relief flickered through him. She continued. But it also sounds like something people say when they want you to stay hopeful. He met her gaze. Hope is not a trick, he said. Not if it is honest. She was quiet for a long moment. Then she stood, walked to the small bookshelf, and pulled out a thin notebook, worn edges, soft cover. He recognized it instantly. The same brand. The same color. She opened it, flipped through a few pages, then closed it again. Some things you do not throw away, she said quietly, even when they hurt. His chest tightened. Yes, he said. I know. She turned back to him, eyes searching his face now, lingering longer than before. You remind me of someone, she said. His breath caught. Someone I used to know, she added. A long time ago. The room seemed to hold its breath. He forced himself to stay still. Is that a good thing? He asked. She hesitated. I do not know yet, she said, and in that uncertainty, something fragile and dangerous began to take shape. He should have left then. That would have been the sensible choice, the clean choice, the professional choice. But instead, he checked the time and said, I should not take more of your evening. She nodded, though something unreadable flickered across her face. You said 5 minutes. You already took more. I know, he said. That is on me. She stood and walked him toward the door, not rushing him, not inviting him to stay either, just restoring the distance that had blurred without either of them noticing. At the doorway, he hesitated. There is one more thing, he said. She stopped, hand resting on the doorframe. Of course there is, he smiled faintly. I may need to come back. There are forms that require a follow-up. When? She asked. Soon, he replied. If that is all right. She considered him for a moment, then nodded once. As long as you call first. I will. Wei. She opened the door. The hallway light spilled in again, echoing the moment when everything had begun. Good night, she said. Good night. He replied. The door closed. He stood there longer than necessary, staring at the wood grain where her hand had rested. Only when footsteps echoed down the hallway did he finally turn and leave. The next morning, she woke earlier than usual. The apartment felt different, quieter, as if it remembered him. She made coffee instead of tea, trying to reset the rhythm of the day, but her mind kept drifting back to the way he spoke, the pauses he left between sentences, the careful distance he maintained. Daniel. The name felt wrong in her mouth, though she could not explain why. At work, she struggled to focus. Numbers blurred together, emails went unread. When her phone buzzed, her heart jumped before she could stop it. But it was only a delivery notification. By noon, she told herself she was imagining things. People came and went. Strangers knocked on doors every day. There was no reason this one should matter. And yet, across town, he sat in his office, staring at a document he had already read 3 times. His assistant spoke, but the words did not register. He kept seeing her apartment, the chipped mug, the notebook, the way she had said, "Some things you do not throw away." He closed the file. "Clear my afternoon," he said. "Sir," his assistant asked, "I need to take care of something personal." She hesitated, then nodded. Of course. He left the building without looking back. That evening, he stood across the street from her building, phone in hand. He had already typed the message twice and erased it both times. He could walk away. Pretend this was enough. Let the past remain sealed. Instead, he typed, "I need to stop by briefly. Just paperwork. Would tonight work?" The reply came sooner than he expected. "Give me 30 minutes. Relief hit him harder than it should have. When he knocked this time, the door opened almost immediately. She looked different, more composed, less guarded, as if she had decided something without realizing it. "I hope this really is brief," she said. "It will be," he promised. Inside, she gestured toward the table. "You can sit." He did. She placed a folder in front of him. "I pulled together everything I have. Lease, receipts, notices. I figured it might save time. Thank you, he said, meaning more than just that. As he flipped through the papers, he noticed the handwriting on the margins. Notes, dates, calculations. You are very organized, he said. She shrugged. When you do not have much, you learn to keep track of it. He looked up at her. You should not have to live like that. The words slipped out before he could stop them. Her expression hardened slightly. You do not know how I live. You are right, he said quickly. I apologize. She sighed and leaned back against the counter. You are an unusual messenger, she said. How so? You listen, she replied. Most people do not. He smiled. That is because most people are in a hurry, and you are not? She asked. He thought of the board meetings waiting, the calls he was ignoring. No, he said, not tonight. She studied him for a long moment, then nodded, as if accepting that answer. Outside, the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the floor. Neither of them noticed the time passing, and neither of them realized that what he had called a follow-up was slowly becoming something else entirely. The next few days unfolded quietly, almost cautiously, as if both of them were afraid that moving too fast would break whatever fragile balance had formed. He came by twice more, always with a reason, always with paperwork, always with an excuse that sounded reasonable enough to be true. Each visit followed the same pattern. He knocked. She opened the door. They exchanged polite words that never quite matched the way their eyes lingered. And each time, he stayed a little longer than planned. On the third visit, she was the one who spoke first. You can take your coat off, she said. You look like you are about to leave, even when you sit down. He hesitated, then did as she suggested, folding the coat carefully over the back of the chair, like someone who respected the space he was borrowing. She noticed. You treat this place like it matters, she said. It does, he replied without thinking. She did not respond, but the tension in her shoulders eased. That evening, the paperwork remained untouched for nearly half an hour. Instead, they talked, not about the past, not about the future, just about ordinary things. She told him about her job, about the long hours and the small victories that no one ever noticed, about how she learned to enjoy simple routines because chaos had once taken too much from her. He listened, truly listened. He did not interrupt, did not offer solutions, did not turn her life into a problem to be fixed. When she finished, she looked almost surprised. You are very quiet, she said. I am learning, he replied. She smiled at that, a small smile, but real. On another evening, he noticed the notebook again, resting on the corner of the table. You write? He asked. She glanced at it, then nodded. Sometimes. What do you write about? She considered the question. Things I do not say out loud. He understood that more than she knew. I used to write, he said. Used to? She asked. Yes. What made you stop? He paused. Life got loud. She studied him. That sounds like an excuse. He smiled. It probably is. She laughed softly, surprising both of them. That sound lingered in the room long after it faded. They began to develop small habits without discussing them. She made tea when he arrived. He brought pastries from a bakery nearby, claiming he bought too many by mistake. They never ate much of them, but they always shared. Sometimes, silence filled the room. But it no longer felt uncomfortable. It felt chosen. One night, as rain tapped against the window, she spoke without looking at him. You really remind me of someone, she said. He felt the words settle in his chest. You said that before, he replied carefully. Yes, she said. And it is starting to bother me. He did not ask why. She turned to him. Because I do not like unresolved things. Neither do I, he said. Her gaze softened. Then why does this feel unresolved? Because it is, he thought. Because I am standing in front of you with the truth locked behind my teeth. Instead, he said, Maybe some things take time to recognize. She accepted that, at least for the moment. As he prepared to leave that night, she walked him to the door again. But this time, she did not reach for the handle right away. "You know," she said quietly, "I usually do not let people come back." "I am aware," he replied. "So why did I let you?" He looked at her, searching for the safest truth he could offer. "Because you trust your instincts," he said. "Even when you pretend you do not." She nodded slowly. The door closed between them, but neither of them felt shut out. Across the city, in a penthouse filled with light and silence, he stood by the window and finally admitted something he had been avoiding since the first knock. He was no longer here because of business. He was here because, without realizing it, they had begun to build something again, not from memories, but from now. It happened on a Thursday evening, the kind of evening that felt ordinary enough to lower her guard. She was finishing dinner when her phone buzzed. A message from him. "I will be nearby tonight. There is one last document that needs confirmation. May I stop by?" She stared at the screen longer than necessary. "Yes," she replied. "You can come." When the knock came, she opened the door without hesitation. He stepped inside, but something about him was different this time. More distant, more restrained, as if he had already crossed a line she could not see. "You look tired," she said. "So do you," he replied. They sat at the table. The folder lay between them, unopened. "You said this was the last document," she said. "It is," he answered. She studied him. "Then why do you look like someone about to deliver bad news?" He did not smile. Before he could respond, her phone buzzed again. She glanced at the screen and frowned. "What is it?" he asked. "There is a notification," she said slowly. "From the building management group chat." Her fingers scrolled. Her expression shifted from confusion to disbelief. "They are announcing a change in ownership," she continued. "Effective immediately." His chest tightened. "They listed the company name," she said. "I recognize it." She looked up at him. "Do you?" "Yes," he said quietly. The silence that followed was sharp. She stood, walked to the window, and stared down at the street below. Her voice was calm when she spoke again. "That company," she said, "belongs to a very powerful man." "Yes." "A chief executive officer," she added. "One of the youngest in the city." "Yes." She turned slowly. "And you work for him?" she asked. He stood. "No," he said. Understanding did not arrive all at once. It crept in, piece by piece, like a truth her mind resisted. She laughed once, short, hollow. "You are not Daniel," she said. He shook his head. "No." She took a step back. "Then who are you?" He met her eyes, knowing there was no safe way left. "My name is Evan," he said. "Evan Hale." The name landed like a blow. Her breath caught. Her face drained of color. "No," she whispered. "Yes," he replied. The room seemed to tilt. Memories rushed in without permission. A younger man, a different voice, a promise made under streetlights. "You disappeared," she said, her voice trembling despite her effort to control it. "You left without a word." "I know. And now you walk into my home," she continued, anger breaking through. "Under a false name?" "I was not planning to stay," he said. "I was not planning to recognize you." She stared at him. "But you did." "Yes. And you still chose to lie." He nodded. "I was afraid." She laughed again, this time bitter. "You always were." She crossed her arms, rebuilding the walls she had lowered. "So this is what this was," she said. "A test? A game?" "No," he said firmly. "Never that." "Then what?" she demanded. He stepped closer, stopping at a respectful distance. "I came for business," he said. "I stayed because I saw you, and I could not leave again." Her eyes burned. "You already did," she said. "Once was enough." The truth stood between them now. Exposed. Unforgiving. and for the first time since the door had opened that night, she looked at him not with curiosity or warmth, but with pain that had waited years to be named. She moved first, not toward him. Away from him. The distance felt deliberate, final. "You should leave," she said. He did not move. "Please," she added, her voice steady but thin. "I need you to leave." "I will," he said, "but not like this." She turned sharply. "You do not get to choose how this ends." "I am not trying to," he replied. "I am trying to explain." "There is nothing left to explain," she said. "You explained it the moment you lied." He took a breath. "I did not come here to hurt you." "And yet you did," she said. Again. The word again hung between them. She walked to the door and opened it wide. Cold air rushed in from the hallway. "Go," she said. He stepped closer, stopping just short of her reach. "I did not leave because I stopped loving you," he said. Her hand tightened around the doorframe. "That is not better." "I know," he said. "But it is the truth." She shook her head slowly. "You always did this," she said. "You always thought the truth, delivered late, would fix everything." "It does not," he said quietly. "Then why say it now?" "Because you deserve it," he answered. "Even if it changes nothing, we're provated." Her eyes glistened, but she did not let the tears fall. "You disappeared," she said. "One day you were there. The next, you were gone. No call, no note, no goodbye." "I was young," he said, "and afraid, and I was left to clean up the damage," she replied. "By myself." He nodded. "I know." "No," she said sharply. "You do not." Knowing would have meant staying. The words struck harder than any accusation. She stepped back again, as if putting space between herself and the past that had just walked back into her life. "You do not get to come back now," she said. "Not like this. Not after all this time." "I am not asking you to forgive me tonight," he said. "Or ever." "Then what are you asking for?" she demanded. He met her gaze, unflinching. "For the chance to tell you the whole story," he said. "Without hiding, without another name, without pretending." She laughed softly, brokenly. "You already told it," she said. "You chose ambition over us." The accusation was quiet. "Certain," he swallowed. "I chose survival," he said, "and I was wrong." She closed her eyes. For a moment, it seemed like she might say something else, something softer. Instead, she opened them and pointed to the door. "Leave," she said again. "Before you make this harder." He hesitated, then nodded. As he stepped into the hallway, he turned back one last time. "I am sorry," he said, "for leaving, for lying, for coming back too late." She did not respond. The door closed between them, not slowly this time, but firmly. Inside the apartment, she leaned against it, her breath shaking despite her effort to control it. Outside, he stood still, staring at the door he had opened once before, and now had no right to open again. This time, the mistake was not recognizing her. It was believing that love alone could undo the damage of time. He did not sleep that night. The city lights stretched endlessly beyond the glass walls of his penthouse, but he did not see them. All he could see was the moment the door closed, the sound it made, the finality of it. For the first time in years, he canceled his morning meetings. By noon, his legal team was confused. By evening, the board was alarmed. He did not explain. Instead, he signed a document that no one had expected him to sign. The acquisition of her building was finalized before sunset, but not the way it was planned. The next morning, a formal notice went out. Not to tenants, to executives. The redevelopment project was terminated, permanently. No renovations, no rent increases, no forced relocations. The property would remain exactly as it was. More than that, the building was transferred into a long-term housing trust, protected from future resale, the kind of decision that did not generate profit, but did generate questions. His assistant stared at him. "This will cost the company millions." "I know," he said, "and the board will not be happy." "They will recover," he replied. "The tenants will not." That evening, a sealed envelope appeared under her door. She noticed it as soon as she stepped inside. At first, she thought it was another notice, another warning disguised as polite language. She almost did not open it, but something made her stop. Inside was a single page, official, clear, impossible to misunderstand. Her lease was renewed indefinitely. No increase. No conditions. Attached was a brief letter, handwritten, not on company stationery, not typed, not polished, just his words. "I am not asking you to forgive me. I am not asking you to see me. This is not an apology meant to reopen wounds. I am taking responsibility for what I did, not as a man from your past, but as the man I am now. You deserved safety then. You deserve it now. No matter what you choose, this door will never close on you again." Her hands trembled as she read it. Tears blurred the page before she realized they were falling. The next day, she confirmed the notice with building management. It was real. Every tenant had received the same protection. No press release, no announcement, no credit taken. That night, she sat alone at her table, the letter beside her, the old notebook open in front of her. She wrote for hours, not about him, about herself, about the years she survived, about the girl who had been left behind and learned how to stand anyway. Near midnight, she stood, walked to the door, and rested her hand against it. On the other side of the city, he stood at his own door, staring at the phone in his hand. He had done everything he could without crossing another line. Now, the choice was no longer his. For the first time since they were young, he had told the truth without asking for anything in return. And that, more than any promise, was the risk he had been afraid to take. 3 days passed. She did not call. He did not knock. Life settled into a strange quiet, as if the city itself was holding its breath. On the 4th evening, she stood by her window watching the lights come on one by one across the street. The building felt different now, safer, not because of locks or leases, but because someone had finally chosen to protect without being asked. The letter lay folded on the table. She had read it so many times she could recite it from memory. He had not begged. He had not explained himself again. He had not asked her to stay. For the first time in her life, he had done something for her without tying it to a promise. She picked up her coat. Across town, he was standing at his own door, keys in hand, when the intercom buzzed. He froze. "Yes?" he said, his voice controlled, careful. "It is me," she replied. For a moment, he did not move. "I am downstairs," she added. "If that is all right." He swallowed. Of course. The elevator ride felt endless. When the doors opened, she stepped out slowly, as if giving herself time to turn back. He stood a few feet away, hands at his sides. No suit, no confidence armor, just the man she had once loved, and then lost. "I did not come for explanations," she said before he could speak. "And I did not come to forgive you." "I understand," he replied. "I came," she continued, "because you finally did what you should have done back then. You chose action over words." He nodded. "I learned too late." "Late is still better than never," she said. Silence stretched between them. But this time, it was not sharp. "I cannot promise you anything," she said. "Not trust, not love, not a future." "I am not asking for promises," he replied. She looked at the door behind him. The same door he had opened years ago when he walked out of her life. The same door he had stood behind, afraid to knock. "I can promise honesty," she said, "and time. That is all I have." He exhaled slowly. "That is more than I deserve." She met his eyes. "Do not make this about deserving. Make it about doing better." A small smile touched his lips. "I can do that." She stepped forward. Not into his arms, not into the past, just into the space between them. The door remained open behind him, light spilling into the hallway. For the first time, it was not a mistake that brought them together. It was a choice, and this time, neither of them walked away.